I challenge all of those people to show me one African language that has a word for homosexuality.
I'm going to give you terms that describe LGBTQ plus in Africa before the coming of Europeans. But let me give you a background. In 2016, when I started writing romance, I had to look at the evolution of African relationships. So you needed to study anthropology, and you also had to study history of them. Then you also study Western relationships or Western romantic novels or Western romance. And one of the things you realize is that the African continent is deeply rooted in Islamic and Christian religion. Okay, these two religions, they see LGBTQ plus as sins. They see everything related to these activities as sins, and for that reason, it's even repugnant to talk about them. So, adherents, we don't study them. Coming from an Islamic background, we don't even talk about these things. Okay, so we don't study them. But as a history student, when you read anthropology, you will find these things across the continent. And the most comprehensive study ever done is by I think it's edited by Stephen Murray and then one other guy. And the title is Boy Wives and Female Husbands. The most comprehensive. And they give evidence to suggest that, conclusively, that LGBTQ plus activities existed across the continent before the coming of Europeans. Now, you need to understand that homosexuality, for instance, is almost present in almost every dominant or every civilization, except a few. Most civilizations had these things. So once African continent had civilizations, some people suggested that these things could be there before the coming of Europeans. So they did a study on it. And they really conclusively said that it actually existed before the coming of Europeans. Okay. I know people will not agree with me because this is not a populist view. The MP made this claim that it did not exist, and languages across the continent do not have these terms. And the terms are Minkisi. Minkisi is Minkisi. Minkisi is one of them. I'm not going to give you the languages for fear of backlash. You can find that ChatGPT that and then ask ChatGPT, where can we find this language and what does it mean? Okay. And then you can also find Biza, B-I-Z-A. And we have Shangago, S-H-A-N-G-A-G-O. Okay. Mashoga, you can spell that. Otije Zenga is O-T-I-J-I-Z-E-N-J-A. That's another one. Okulekowika, now find the spelling yourself. There are more terms related to that, and you can find all these terms in Boy Wives, Female Husbands. The terms really describe the relationship that existed before the coming of Europeans to introduce LGBTQ plus or whatever that we are talking about. Now, one of the things you need to understand is that in some cultures in Africa, it was celebrated. LGBTQ plus activities were celebrated. They were not frowned upon. They were not illegal. They were not immoral in the eyes of the culture. Okay. But the identity of it, which we see today, that people want to be described as Muslims, as Christians, as Igbo, as Hausa, the LGBTQ plus want to be described as LGBT. A homosexual wants to be called a gay. And a lesbian wants to be called a lesbian. The identity politics, the identity of it is what was not common across the continent, but it existed before the coming Europeans. And most credible historians and anthropologists do not support the idea that these things did not exist before the coming Europeans. Thank you.